The Brand Ed Podcast with Robbie Fowler, episode 31, Why Your Personal Brand is Failing to Connect with More Customers, featuring superb copywriter and my good friend, Geoff Kullman. Welcome to the Brand Ed Podcast, the show that helps you position, pitch, and profit from your brand. I believe the chaos and confusion around what branding is, why it matters for your business, and how to translate your brand into profit leads to overspending on marketing, underperforming businesses, and overwhelmed leaders. Stay tuned to discover how to position your brand in the market, pitch your business with purpose, and profit from a life-giving brand that blesses you and your customers. I'm thrilled to have my good friend and great copywriter on the show, Geoff Kullman. Now, Geoff is a direct response copywriter, and he's worked with influential thought leaders like Paul Martinelli, Gary Chapman, Mike Kim, Dr. Amy Johnson, and many, many more. So you're going to get some great information on how to connect your personal brand with more of your customers. We're going to take a look and you're going to get answers to like where should you start when it comes to writing copy for your personal brand? What do you need to be looking for if you hire out copywriting from someone like a copywriter? And we're even going to dab into a little bit of the neuroscience and the psychology behind copywriting, what you need to know as a personal brand in order to make to take advantage of that. So tune in. This is going to be a great episode. I can't wait to dive in together. Let's do it with my good friend, Geoff Kullman. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here with the first Canadian, by the way, the first Canadian on the podcast. Look at there, eh? Who dared it? So I'm super excited to welcome Geoff to the podcast. So Geoff, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you hail from in the beautiful country of Canada. And I'm super excited about sharing you and your great insights with our audience. So tell us just a little bit briefly about you, and then I'll ask you some more questions kind of about what you do and how you got started.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Robbie. Excited for our conversation. All you need to know is that I'm Canadian, and that's it.
Yes. Yep.
Done.
And
wrap it up.
We're going to try to out-apologize each other on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry. No.
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. You were going to say that first. I'm sorry.
I was. Anyway, so I'm a copywriter for a lot of thought leaders and personal brand folks. So copywriter meaning not, I suspect, or I always assume that people understand what I mean when I say I'm a copywriter.
Right.
But maybe they don't. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep the running total or? At the end, in the show notes, we'll try to do a recap.
Go.
Anyway, I've got
so if
one.
you want to pause the podcast now, put an over and under on how many apologies we'll get. Go for it, and we'll.
So I introduce myself as a copywriter, and people think, great, I'm a lawyer that helps with trademarks and copyrights. No, I help write them, or I write the marketing material for emails and sales funnels for thought leaders. So that's what I do. Yep. I get to do it from my home office on the west coast of Canada, on an island on the west coast of Canada, even better. Yeah, so it's basically a rainforest, a temperate rainforest, they call it. So it rains a lot here. Doesn't snow. Sorry, I'm in Canada, but it doesn't snow.
And how far from, like, if you cross the Great Border there into Washington State or whatever, how far away are you from heading down to the States?
You can't. That's been closed since March, and there's
that's very true.
No plan of opening it anytime soon.
Right.
Which is just weird. But yeah, normally in normal
non-pandemic times,
non-pandemic times, there's a ferry that goes right from the island, from Seattle. So
cool.
We're pretty close by.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so you write copy, not trademarks. You write copy for clients to help them market and sell their products, widgets, services, that kind of thing. So you're doing that day in and day out. You get a new client that comes in, just walk us through as we're all listening to this. And for some folks, they may be very familiar with this. And like you said, other folks may be like, oh, wow, people get paid to do that. So how do you get started when a new client comes in the door, they hire Geoff, and Jeff's like, all right, I'm going to, help you out, help you sell your product or service or whatever. Where do you start so that folks can kind of get an idea of, oh, okay, that makes sense. I know what he does and how that would be helpful for a client. So where do you start?
I'll answer that in two ways. So I used to start with the overall brand, the messaging, the story.
Okay.
A lot of times now, the clients I work with, now they've already got that figured out. They're a few steps down the road. Okay. So they've got branding stuff figured out, not perfected, but figured out enough that it's not where I need to begin. So with clients in the past, when I would start with their brand, before I write a single word, we're hopping on. It used to be a 4-hour call, like half the day. And we're figuring out everything from, what's their avatar? Who are we talking to? What's the message that we want to get out there? What's the transformation that we want to lead people through? All that type of stuff. So that's where I typically start back then. I also used to be a StoryBrand certified guide, if you ever heard of that. So I had a very particular framework that I was licensed to walk people through in terms of figuring out their brand and their story. I haven't done that in a while, but it's still a good framework to walk people through. So now I spend a lot more time figuring out clients' voices before which sounds, as I say it sounds like they have all the voices in their head going, I don't know. But so since they've got their message figured out, they've kind of got their story at least identified, if not properly formatted. But so figuring out their voice, how they talk, how they communicate with their client base, essentially mimicking the way that they speak, the words they use, the grammar that they use, the flow that they have in their speech, so that I can then become them as I write their emails, as I write their sales copy. So that's where I start now, is kind of because they've got that initial element figured out enough. We start with the voice, and then I can move on to, okay, so what's the actual story here that we're telling?
Okay. So I'm kind of fascinated by both parties. The one, like you said, that you have to kind of start them from ground zero because they don't have those answers. They haven't really thought through that yet. But that second group that comes to you and that work has been done to some extent, what do you usually get from them, and how do you usually get that? Like, do they just send you a file, or how would you kind of put somebody in that second category where you say, oh, if they have this, 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 and this, then, I don't have to do the 4-hour session. Yeah.
So a lot of times they'll just send me probably stuff similar to what you would have done with them, that type of document where it's just a lengthy file of here's our, they got their avatar figured out. They know who they're talking to. They know enough details about that avatar. Perhaps the job they have, the income they have, but more their goals, their aspirations, those types of things already written down. So a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I know who my customer is," but they haven't done the work to write it down. Which is those are two very different places, right?
Right.
I know who my customer is. Okay, but now I'm writing for you. I don't know who your customer is.
Right.
So who are they? Right. Write it down. Figure it out. Yeah. Tell me.
Right.
So they have a document that outlines a lot of that, including not just their avatar, but also it's usually around aspiration, but what's the message that we're trying to get out there through your product? As people are trying to use you as a brand to get to where they want to be, what's the story that we can tell to take them from point A to point B?
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's typically the file that they'd send me is similar to work that you would have done with them.
Right.
Not that I've ever taken over one of your clients, but
but maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
The South and the North shall meet.
There you go.
We shall rise together. Okay. Yeah, that's just fascinating to think about. Okay, what would Geoff get if somebody kind of already had that? And I'm sure that comes in different shapes and sizes where they think some of that, and you have to follow up a little bit more and peel back the curtain and do that. So when you're so here you are now, you're getting ready to start to write some copy on their behalf to help them again, market themselves. If there's not enough information on that customer they're really wanting to pitch, what kind of things leave Geoff going, oh man, I need to know more? What are some of those common, maybe, if we're thinking like you drive a car and you got the blind spots where you don't see. So what do you get when you're like, well, man, that's better than nothing. We didn't start from zero, but I really need to know this in order to capture that voice that you're talking about.
Typically what's missing, I'll come back to voice, because voice I can usually figure it out. People don't know their own voice, so I have to do the research to find it out. Right. But usually what's missing is that aspirational piece that I just talked about. So it's the most critical piece for me to write the marketing journey for them. But so a lot of times they'll tell me, oh, this is who our customer is, but they won't define what it is that they want. Where they are. Pain Island, as our friend Mike Kim likes to say, Pain Island. They know, or they don't know what their pain to pleasure island is. Okay, what that journey looks like, or what the bridge is that gets them there. So, so usually they have pieces of it, little breadcrumbs that I can follow the trail and try to figure it out, or follow the trail and say, this is what I'm thinking your message is. Am I right? And then they can define it further, or say, no, you're way off the mark, or So I forget what the question was, but I remember.
How often? Sorry. No. So there you go. There you go. Ding, I need a bell.
You're zero.
I'll have to insert. Three. Yeah, I'll have to insert. My apologies for not having a physical bell on hand to ding every time.
Add it in post.
Yes, I'll put it in post. How percentage-wise, how often is that aspirational piece missing? Would you say? I'm curious. Some of this is just for me. I'm fascinated by this.
So clients I've worked with in the past, and those are more probably what people listening to our conversation are. They're early stage or sub 7-figure, below 7-figure brands. Then it's oh man, like 95%. Right, is pretty high. And it's usually a one person business, or they have a few helpers, but nobody's job is to figure out what are we actually saying here. Right. So that percentage is fairly high. Once you get to, I hate to say higher level of businesses, but once you get to more income or longer term businesses, often they've done some of that work. They've hired out for some of that work in the past. And yet it's still probably 50% of them don't have, at least of the ones that I worked with, don't have that clearly set out, of what's the journey that I'm trying to sell here. Yeah. Even like an 8-figure brand, they still don't, they know their products really well. They know their customers really well. Yeah. They know the end that their customers really want, but they have not defined a really good path that leads the customers down that path to go, oh, I need to buy this next thing. And then I need to buy this next thing. Right. Or I need to double up my order next time, or I need to tell friends about this, so it's still rather low. 50% seems. Yeah. That
was going to be my guess. I was like hoping and hunching in that direction, because I know in my experience, it is really rare. Yeah. And I know, so I've tweaked my language, even when working with clients. I will call them, instead of the avatar thing or whatever, I will purposely call them customer transformation profiles. This is what we're trying to create. Yeah. So that from the get-go, the heading up there is, I don't want just a bunch of facts and figures on a piece of paper about, again, some avatar like they're in one of my teenagers' video games or whatever. If you can't help them transform, they're going to go looking elsewhere. Yeah. I love that. I love it because I can imagine when you're in your shoes, unless that's clear, man, you're just handcuffed. Totally. I mean, you can take their paycheck, but you're not going to actually be able to help them. And that's what you're there to do. So, so once you get that, okay, so now you've got a clear picture. Usually you've had to help them, nurse them along the way, fill that out a little bit more. So where do you go once that kind of customer aspiration is clear about where you're wanting to help them take their customer? where do you go from there? Do you have, do you turn to formulas and patterns? So in my mind, I've pictured, right, you got all of your stuff, and this is that classic writer's scene in the movie where you're just staring at the typewriter kind of picture. So where do you start once you have all of that kind of foundational material ready in place?
Yeah. So I start with something called a brand voice document for me. So that's assuming that they have their avatar or their customer transformation document already done, as you called it. But
yes.
So now I need to know, okay, so I can figure out the campaign here. I can figure out what elements need to be on the sales page, but I first need to know, or at least the way that I work, I first need to know how I'm going to say it. So I basically define their brand. Even if they've already supplied this to me, I define their brand by personality traits. I walk through a template that I basically describe this really, really thoroughly for, okay, so they're energetic as a brand. What does that mean? What's a broader definition of what that means to be an energetic brand? What does that mean that I do in the copy? What does that mean that I don't do in the copy?
Gotcha.
So obviously active voice instead of passive voice. Probably means I'm using short sentences if they're an energetic brand, short sentences so that we can go from one point to the next to the next.
Keep the pace moving along.
The pace moving along. I'm not writing long paragraphs. Right. Right. So I figured that out as well for typically 4 or 5 personality traits for their brand. And then this is me just geeking out, but I go through, okay, what does that mean for their word preferences? What does that mean for their tempo preferences? What does that mean for their jargon? What does that mean for about 20, I think it's 23 different things that I go through, which is probably a bit excessive. But like I said,
and you're sorry about that. But
I'm very sorry. Yes. On the other hand, when I show that document to clients and they're like, holy crap, you've done a lot of work. Wow. It's impressive in that sense. But
I imagine, do they get their hands on that? Because I imagine, so after that engagement, that is one super helpful piece of information that you figured out for them. Yeah. In addition to, and I wrote this copy for this marketing campaign or whatever. That document, man, that's got some serious lifetime value.
Yeah, definitely. So there's no flat answer to that question. So it's similar to sometimes, clients might have hired me in the past just to write a campaign. So I've figured out their customer avatar on my own.
Sure.
They didn't want to pay me to do that for them. So I figured I still need to figure it out on my own so I can write for them. But they don't get that document because they didn't pay me for it. So same with the brand voice document. They can get it, but usually they don't want to pay for it as a separate deliverable. If they're on a retainer or something, that might be different.
Right.
But that's usually not a document they want to invest in.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is fine. That just means they need to keep hiring me.
Right. Yeah. I'd love to do another podcast episode where we try to figure out how do we position that so Jeff's clients will pay for that. Because I know I've wrestled with the same thing. It happens all of the time. If you're coming in from the word door, right? You open the door and I can help you with your words. In the past, I would have most frequently come in from the design door, right? Help you with design. And I'm the same. I got the same exact struggles and issues. And for literally years since I started doing some version of this, like in 2001, I would do all that. And like you said, the customer they appreciate it, but they never technically pay for it. So
like the guy who, mutual connection of ours, Mike Brennan, who did my podcast cover art. He offered, I can give you the whole brand guide, like design, whatever it's called. Yep.
Brand style guide.
Yeah. And I didn't really want to pay for it. I just wanted to, that's not a helpful document for me. Mike, I want to come back to you and pay you more. Yep. So keep that document, but I'll just come back and pay you more for the next thing I need.
Right.
So I see the brand voice template or brand voice document is very similar. They could pay me for it and I could send it to them. They're not really going to know how to use it.
Sure.
It's helpful. They can pass it on to another writer.
Right.
But even then, I'd rather, from my point of view and from theirs, what's most beneficial to them as well. Like just come back.
Keep you around. Yeah. Yeah.
So
because you're already running at 70 miles per hour or whatever. You can just hit the ground running the next time.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That totally makes sense. Okay. So you've got the brand voice figured out, and we'll talk a little bit about it at the end, because you have a way for folks to, believe it or not, get their hands on this very document that we're talking about. Like, whoa, I would love to see one of Geoff's brand voice documents. Well, we've got good news for you. Just hang on. Sorry, we can't give it to you now, but we will give that to you in just a little bit. So once that's in place, where do you head? Like I said, are there formulas that you're using that a person listening to this can go, oh, that's how the magic happens? Are you just starting from scratch every time, or are there some tools or formulas or patterns that you use, or I know I need these words here? What do you do next with that?
On a particular piece or a particular campaign or what?
Yep. On a particular campaign. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of folks hire me to do email campaigns, like basically top of funnel type stuff, figure out their lead magnet, figure out an email campaign that comes after. So that's a very particular formula as well, which I call the 6P sequence.
Okay.
Basically, it's a way to onboard folks. Download your lead magnet. They download a PDF from your website. You get their email address in exchange, and then you send them. You don't just send them the document, but you send them a campaign, an email campaign over the next week or two. And so 6 Ps, each of those, basically, the P stands for something. Yeah. So PDF, you deliver the email to them, then you send another email. Could be the same day, usually the next. That goes through the problem. Say, I know that this is what you are going through. This is what you're struggling with. And you know that that's the problem because the title of your lead magnet specifically identifies that's their problem. Whether you name the PDF positively or negatively, you still know that's their problem. Then the next P is promise. So what do you do to help people overcome that problem? Then you show them some proof, testimonials, case studies, that type of thing. Customer success stories. And then you send them a prompt, which is like a 9-word email of, hey, do you want to work on this together? It's very much a yes or no binary type of email. And I tend to strip it down in terms of design. It literally just looks like I sent them a text from my phone. But it's an automated campaign. But the reply rates on that are just huge because it's like 10 words long, 9 words long, and it's a yes or no question.
It's just hanging there.
Usually they don't answer yes or no. They answer, tell me more about that, or what would that look like, or can we get on a call, or and even if they do say no, that's still a positive because now you're not wasting any more effort on them. Sure, but also now my email service provider like MailChimp or ConvertKit or whatever is now sees them as, this person it's not just emails they send out. They also get replies. Yeah. It's an active this is an active list. This is an engaged list. So that's always good too. Prompt, and then the pitch is the last one. Okay. So then you make your hard pitch to them. Fantastic. And of course, you've had soft pitches all the way through the campaign. Sure. See calls to action. Somebody's really ready. Yeah. They could have said, dude, just tell me where to go get it. I'll go get it. Yeah. So that's a great, told you what it is yet. That's a great structure for a campaign that people can use. It works well for me and my clients. I think it's just helpful for folks to know, if they're listening in on this, and maybe some of this is new, maybe a lot of this is new, that they're not sitting there going, how does Geoff every single time out of thin air just magically pull stuff? That there are, and I know you're talking about this on your podcast, which we'll talk a little bit about. There's an art and a science. You're not just starting in a vacuum every single time and going, okay, I have no idea. That's just helpful for people to know, because they go, most of those formulas, patterns, they're not deep, dark, hidden secrets that you have to join some secret society to get access to. No, you just in fact, the one you mentioned, again, they can go get that from you. Off your website. I think I've still got a webinar up on that one, on the 6P sequence. Yeah. And the same goes for sales pages or website home pages or things. It's all formulas. It's all you do this and then this, and then you often follow the same format, just worded differently. Sure. Okay, so speaking of formulas, we'll see where this goes. I'm always curious about this. So you alluded to this. If anyone is listening to the podcast and they looked at All Into Marketing,
they've probably come across the very popular, hey, somebody's version of framing your marketing around a story, right? Following the pattern of a story. It's hugely popular right now. You hear about it all over the place. So, I'm just, and you mentioned you've had direct experience with that, and so I'm curious. I hear all that. It all sounds fantastic to me. I don't have any data to back this up or anything. I'm just curious. Now that you've done this for a while, how much do you think an average customer? So let's say a business takes their website, they kind of frame the language and the message on that marketing message on that website to follow a story pattern. How much does the normal customer? I know we all think it's great as on the backside of that. Either the marketer or copywriter that helped them redo their website that way, or the business themselves that goes, hey, we now put this in some sort of story pattern. How often do you think the actual customer could recognize that? Like if we gave them a pop quiz after, hey, you just read that entire homepage. Did you know that was actually crafted in a story? Can you plop out just these story elements and how often do you think an actual customer could do that? And then secondly, does it matter if they can or can't?
I was going to say, I'm not sure that we even care that that a customer can identify that that's a story. If that customer on your website is a marketer, they're probably going to see the story.
Yeah, they can sniff it out
there, right? Because that's what they're subconsciously looking for. But I don't think it matters that they can recognize or see that it's a story. And the main reason is, and this is an important principle that I learned from StoryBrand as well, but I don't think it's original. I don't think it's not original to them either. But the story that you're telling on your website, it's on your website, but it's not your story. It's the reader's story. It's the potential customer's story of transformation that you want to be telling. So, because if it's just the story of your brand, I mean, that goes on your about page, maybe. About page. On your about page. And that's a great place for it. But everywhere else, and even on that about page, it's about you, but it's really about them. But certainly everywhere else on your website, it's the stories about them, where they are right now and where they want to get to.
Right.
And the fact that your company, your widget, your thing can help them get to where they want to go. But that's so, they shouldn't necessarily be able to see that it's a story, just telling them where they are, where they want to get to and how to get there.
Yeah. I just think with all the buzz going around story and marketing, I want to give, if you're listening to this and you have a business, I want to give you some relief. Like your customer 9 times out of 10, unless they're Geoff or me, like we do this for a living, they are not going to know it's framed in a story format. Nor if given a quiz, could they even fill out, okay, who is the main character? What was, they're not even going to be able to take a breath. It's okay. The main thing that we've talked about now 3 or 4 times in this episode is you've got to know where your customer wants to go, right? And that's what you have to speak to in your marketing and on your website. Don't just talk about yourself. Nobody likes somebody that does that anyway in real life. Guess what? They don't like it in business life either. So that's what the story framework can help you do, but that's the point of it. You can get there several different ways. So I just know at times, because I'll have, and you probably have the same thing, clients, hey, I want to do it in this specific story like framework. And they're just pigeonholed in this, it's got to be this way because I took the course or I read the book or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's a means to an end. We can get to that same end, like I said, lots
and there are so many different story structures. I mentioned the one that I used to be certified in. It's great story structure. All it is the hero's journey. Reframed into marketing, well, right? Marketed really well.
And marketed well.
Although marketed really well because it's using its own framework to market it. But it's all just the hero's journey. So all these different story structures, and I'm even researching right now from my podcast, doing this week I'm starting a series specifically about stories and story structure and how we use them in marketing, which you didn't even know, but thanks for the.
There you go.
And so, there's so many different structures, and the idea isn't to be tied to one. It's
right.
Find the one that works with your brain. Find the one that works well, that you can figure out, and then tell your customer's story really well through that framework.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask a little bit now. You've got a podcast. It is called what? What is your podcast name? The official title is
The Psychology of Copywriting Podcast.
Okay. And I have listened to an episode. Fantastic. So highly recommend that. We'll put a link to that in the show notes so that they can go start tracking with you there. So you don't have to listen to an episode to get from the title, the psychology of that. You're looking into the psychology of copywriting beyond just, hey, here's a quick formula to do. So why should brands or companies care about, some of that neuroscience or the psychology and some of the, we mentioned briefly art science, why should they care about something like neuroscience or psychology?
So again, our mutual friend, Mike Kim, him and Ray Edwards launched a thing a while back.
Yep.
They were selling sales page templates, basically. They said only amateurs right from scratch. I would also
genius copywriting move, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't want to be an amateur.
I would add that only amateurs write for the art of copywriting. Only amateurs are interested in, what fancy words can I get on here? What flowery little phrases can I insert? What cute little call to action button can I have? And those are fun. Those are good. They can work sometimes, but copywriting is more than an art. It's also a science. So you got to understand what the heck's going on in the brain of your reader as they're reading your stuff. So that's one of the reasons that we use story, because it's something called narrative transportation. It takes them, we've all done this in movies, in commercials, even if it's done well, but we forget where we are. We just find ourselves in that story. It's dangerous when we're listening to a podcast and that happens while we're driving. Right.
And you go, how did I get to the kids' school?
How did I get here? Oops, I meant to go to a different place.
Right.
But you got to understand what's going on in the brain of your reader so that you can, I don't mean it to sound manipulative, but so that you can steer where they're going. So that you can lead that conversation to where you want it to go, because you understand, if I talk about this, it's going to trigger their amygdala, or if I talk about that, it's going to send them into that narrative transportation where I get to show them I'm selling wine and I get to send them to Tuscany in Italy to have a glass of Pinot, right? So, understanding what's going on in their brain is what makes, in my opinion, what makes a professional a professional.
All right. So I love asking this question. So here we have a professional copywriter. Okay. So how would you, let's say you've got a friend, right? And for whatever reason, they didn't hire you for their copywriting, but they come back to you, hey, I just hired a copywriter to do this. The project's finished or whatever. How would you tell, an entrepreneur, someone who's a personal brand, someone maybe who's running a business, how do they know if at the end of the day how do they evaluate whether the copywriting they got from somebody they hired is good? How do they know?
Two really quick answers, and then I'll give a longer answer. But first of all, if the word "I" is in there a whole bunch, like that clearly indicates that they're writing your personal story on the website and not the customer's story. So "I" is like the biggest no word in copywriting. So it's okay if it's in there a few times, but look for that. And if it's there a lot, then tweak the copy, or get them to tweak the copy, so that I is less of a focus and the customer is more of a focus. The other thing is, don't be obsessed with word count. It sounds like an excuse or a way to do less work, but actually writing fewer words is much, much harder.
Sure.
You want every word that's on whether it's a sales page or in an email or on your website, you want every word to fight for its right to be there. And so, why say in 50 words what you could have said in 5? It's going to engage the brain of your reader a lot more. It's going to keep them on task, on point, on your asset, on your sales page or website or whatever. So yeah, look for eyes, get rid of the eyes, and don't be fooled by short being bad. Now, sometimes short is just means they've been lazy and not done a good job. But if it's short, you should be able to tell, oh, this is powerful stuff.
Right.
And then the longer form answer is just, how does it, what's your gut feel as you read through it? Does it feel like the way that you'd talk, the way that you'd want your brand represented? Does it feel like they've really understood who your customer is, where they are, where they want to go? And if you can't tell, then get a friend, get a spouse, get somebody who isn't as close to the brand as you are to read through it and give you their thoughts. Most copywriters are decent. We all also really like feedback, or maybe not but work better with feedback. So typically what they should be sending you, you should think of it as a first draft. So you should be saying, what about this or what about that? You should be supplying feedback so that they can go and write a better second version or third version. And make sure if you have you should have a contract. If you do have a contract with them, make sure that second and third revision are in there, or first and second revision are in there, so that you can give them thoughts and they can go back and make it stronger. It typically will take 1 or 2 revisions to get to the final version.
Sure.
So don't be afraid to give feedback. You're not going to hurt their feelings. And even if you are going to hurt their feelings, which actually you might, as a Canadian, I get very offended.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you might hurt their feelings.
Even if you do hurt their feelings, you're paying them. So
yes,
they can suck it up.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's really, really helpful. Anybody can do that. Yeah. I will oftentimes tell my client, or I'll do this if they hire me ahead of time, hit the homepage in your browser. If it involves a website, even if it doesn't, I'll usually go there, because if it's not on the site, it's, that's usually a pretty good sign of how other things are going. And just, Control Find, Command F, do the word I or you.
Yeah.
If I see no U's on the page, YOU, right? I'm like, I don't have to keep reading to know, okay, there's some work to be done. They haven't thought about framing this in light of their customer. And it sounds so simple, but it really is challenging for most businesses, because again, we've got our own agendas. I'm hiring Geoff, and I'm, here's my campaign, and here's the budget and the contract, and like, this is important. That's why I hired Geoff, because I really want this done. And it just gets hard to remember, but your customer doesn't care about your third quarter goals.
Yeah,
that's not why they're on your site. Like, I want to make sure this company hits their third quarter numbers. So,
and to speak to the moment that we find ourselves in with, I don't know what it's like down there. There are hints and rumors that we might be shutting down restaurants, things up here again. But your customer also, unless they're a really loyal and engaged audience, they don't really care about your problems right now.
Correct.
You need to sell more product. We all need to sell more product. We all need to get more clients right now. That's not part of your story. Your story is that's not the part of the story that you tell. You tell the story of this. These are hectic times, unconventional, crazy times. Here's how we can help. Yep. And you draw them into that story, and then that's how you sell more stuff and do a better job for your business. Not by saying, "Oh, we need your help."
Excellent. Okay, so let's wrap this up by telling folks a little bit about where they can find more info about you. You've got a podcast that we mentioned. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. On your website, I know that the brand voice piece that you spoke about, you actually have a template. They can go download that, grab that for free, and find that, start using that, and even at least see the categories, even if they're not going to use it. They can look through that and go, whoa, I need to figure some of these pieces out.
If they do nothing else with that, the brand voice template, just figure out that first top section that we already talked about. Figure out your brand personality. What are the 4 or 5 personality traits, and what does that mean? Then what does it mean you do and you don't do in how you write? Figure that out. The rest of that page of the template is me geeking out about what I supply for clients, but figure out that top part for sure. And then there's a few different story formats in there as well. People can use.
Okay, so we'll throw the links to that. The Psychology of Copywriting podcast with Geoff Kullman. We'll throw your website in there where they can go download that brand voice. And I believe I looked today, they can get the 6 Ps that's on there somewhere. We'll put a link directly to that. So if they want to grab that from you, they can do that. I do so much appreciate your time, appreciate your honesty and your super helpful information for our audience. Any last things you want to remind them about?
I just want to say I'm sorry. No.
I'm sorry for this whole episode.
Yeah. No, I would just tell people, go check out my podcast, Psychology of Copywriting. I really do try to we geek out for about 10 minutes and then we get into some real practical, what does that mean for how you write, how you tell your story. So go check that out. And then we're going to link to pretty much everything else that we already talked about. But
everything you ever have done or own.
I firmly believe in just giving stuff away. Yeah. Valuable stuff. So there's tons of free stuff on my website to go check out.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we'll put all of that in the show notes, and thank you so very much for your time today. Go check out his podcast, The Psychology of Copywriting, and I'm sure we'll chat again, Geoff. We'll have you on here.
I'll have to have you on since you're a 5.
That's right. We'll 5 out for sure. It was so good to talk to my friend Geoff, packed with information. So thankful again that he joined us on this episode of the podcast. A couple of things to remember. Go check the show notes. I will put a link to Geoff's website. He also has a training coming up on February 20th, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. But on February 20th, he's got a free webinar on how to write your own 6-figure sales page. So make sure you go to his website, check that out, get signed up for that. Again, I'll put a link to his website in the show notes. And you can also get to his Psychology of Copywriting podcast. That's all in the show notes. One other quick thing I wanted to mention. I want you to go grab my new resource. It's called 4 Ways to Make a Great First Impression with Your Website. It's a little cheat sheet that's going to help you really quick. 4 ways to make a great first impression with your website. It is great for coaches or consultants, speakers, authors, creators. If you've got a personal brand, go grab that new resource. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, or you can find it on my website, robbyf.com, ROBBYF.com. Can't wait to talk again next time. Until then, go and build a life-giving brand.